Okay, we are here at lesson 5. Can you believe we're halfway done? We're halfway through our 10-week study. It's about time. Today is February the 11th. Can you believe it's February 11th? I can't. I went to look at the date on something and I thought there's no way it's the 11th. Oh, look under the table. There's some down there. Okay. Um, So we're glad that you're here. If you are, we're here live. We've got the three of us on camera, and there's two ladies here at the table. So hopefully we'll have a good discussion today. Um, but if you're watching this from the recording, we're glad that you joined us on the recording as well. Today we're going to be looking predominantly at Hebrews chapter 12. Our homework last time, that's why I wanted you to read it. Our homework last time was Hebrews 11 and 12. Hebrews is an amazing book, and I just love it all. But I just love chapter 11 and 12, and that's what LaDonna and I were talking about earlier was, this, it reads like a sermon, and I just love this is my favorite part of the sermon. We're talking about It's About Time. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see my slides. Share from the beginning. Okay. Today we're going to talk about In the Meantime. For anybody who's taken my Bible studies before, that may sound familiar. We did a whole 10-week study on In the Meantime. So, but I really couldn't come up with a better title because last week we talked about patience. So far we talked about how God is omnitemporal, that there are advantages and disadvantages to looking to the past. Everything happens at the time appointed for his purpose. And then last time we talked about how waiting is hard and waiting requires patience. We talked about the two different Greek words for patience, macrothumia and hupomone. Do y'all remember that macrothumia is patience inspired by mercy, and hupomone is patience inspired by hope. So that's important to know because we may see that again at some point, in our study. But right now we're going to start with Hebrews chapter 12. I was very ambitious when I started my study this week and started writing everything out. I was going to do verses 1 through 3. But I didn't get through. I went Hebrews 12, 1 and 2. So the top of my page here, I was able to change it in the slides, but the top of my page, the handout says Hebrews 12, 1 through 3. Yeah, we're not going to make it all the way through 3, just so you know. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. LaDonna, can you read verse 1 through 3? You're reading from the King James, right?
I have the New King James.
New King James, that's fine. You want to read 1, 2, and 3?
Sure. Therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls.
Okay, so now you see why I wanted to go all the way through verse 3, but in his heart or soul, yes. So we're going to start, and I decided because I started studying this week, and this is kind of how all of my Bible studies start. is just by breaking down each section of words. So this was just the beginning of my Bible study, and I never got any further than that for us to do together. So we're just gonna look at the words. So first of all, in the King James, it says wherefore. In mine, it says therefore. Therefore, so therefore and wherefore are the same Greek word. And the Greek word is toigorun. Do you all know how to pronounce these words in Hebrew? Okay, well then that's right. The Greek word is toigorun, and it means truly for then, or consequently, or for this reason, or accordingly. So it's just like Dale says every time he preaches when he talks about therefore. You've got to back up and see what therefore is therefore. Okay? Because you know that therefore is not whenever it's not the beginning of an idea. Okay? Therefore is a what do you get, a joining word? So it's joining the chapter before to what's fixing to happen now. So it refers to everything that's previously been stated. Now, in this case, it could be the whole book of Hebrews, but specifically chapter 11. The root word of toigorun is totu, and it means this thing, or for this specific reason, for this specific thing. So before we jump ahead, we're going to see how it's used in another place in the Bible. And that is Luke chapter 22. If you'll look in Luke chapter 22, we're going to see where that word tuotu, Luke chapter 22. And see if you can find the word for this thing, this specific thing in each one of these verses that I'm going to give you. The first one is verse 15. Are you finding it? Hebrews chapter 22, verse 15. Okay, so in the King James it says, and he said unto them, with desire I have desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. Do you find the word? The word for this thing, this specific thing. Not before. And he said unto them, with desire I have desired to eat this Passover. No, the word is this. This Passover. With desire I have desired to eat this Passover. This specific thing. This specific Passover. So when he says, with desire, great desire I have desired to eat this Passover, he's not just, this isn't just a word like just there. There's something specific about this one. Verse 17. And he took the cup and gave thanks and says, take this specific thing and divide it among yourselves. Verse 19.
Gave thanks and broke it and gave it to them, saying, this is my body, which is given for you to do this in remembrance of me.
2 times in that verse. This is my body, this specific thing. This is my body, which is given for you. This do in remembrance of me. So when he's talking about this, he's talking about this specific thing. There's something important here. This word isn't just this. It's saying this because of everything that happened before. This. That's where we get therefore. wherefore in chapter 12, the therefore or the wherefore. Y'all, I had church just one day on this one word, just by myself, talking about the wherefore, that because of all the things that I just told you, therefore, and when he's saying, I want to eat this Passover because of everything, this Passover, this cup, take this thing because of everything, because of sin, because of all the pain and the hurt and the everything. Take this. This is my blood of the new covenant. And the bread, this is my body. Do this in remembrance of me. And then in verse 20, after supper, this cup is the New Testament in my blood, which is said for you, this one, because of everything else. And then my favorite is verse 42. Skip ahead to verse 42. And Jesus is in a different place now. They're not at the Passover meal anymore. You want to read it for me, LaDonna, verse 42?
Saying, Father, if it is your will, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done.
This cup, this very thing. That's Jesus praying in the garden. If it's possible, let this cup be taken from me. But nevertheless, because of everything before coming to this moment, your will, not mine. Oh, just gives me chill bumps. But anyway, couldn't stop with just one word of Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. Therefore, or wherefore, King James says, yeah, we're back at Hebrews chapter 12 now. Says, seeing we also are compassed about. My Amplified says, since we are surrounded by. Okay. This imagery that we're getting ready to read is, they would have understood this, especially in the context of an athletic event. Okay, because we're going to talk about running and all that stuff. So when he said, seeing we are compassed about, or since we are surrounded by, that image is of an Olympic amphitheater. Okay, where they have rows and rows and rows of spectators. Okay, like a football game, or in their case, like a Coliseum, rows and rows of seats. It says, therefore, or wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses. In the Amplified, it says, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses who by faith have testified to the truth of God's absolute faithfulness. Witness, a great cloud of witnesses. Witness in the Bible especially was very important to have a witness if you were going to prove anything. You needed a witness, but we know by definition a witness gives testimony of what they have in the past personally seen or experienced. That's the job of a witness. You cannot be a witness to something you did not see yourself. You can't give testimony about something you did not experience or see yourself. So a witness is someone who gives testimony about what they have personally seen. A witness also provides verification of what is currently happening in front of them. So we know if you are going to sign a document and you need a witness, that witness is testifying by their signature of what they're looking at right in front of them. Okay, so in this context, a witness giving testimony of what was in the past, that's chapter 11. all of chapter 11 is talking about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Moses and Sarah and all those people. Yeah, well, you weren't supposed to name what they did. Yeah, that was a lesson in GMAs that we had to do, was name what they did. They all had faith and endured and did what they were supposed to do. Um, the Greek word that says that's cloud, that's talking about cloud, didn't mean one cloud, but it means a vast mass of clouds. So the imagery is, since we are surrounded by like an amphitheater, so great a cloud of witnesses, so a vast mass amount of witnesses that are testifying of what they have seen in the past, but they're also spectators to this, what we're going through, that they are providing verification of what's happening right now in front of them. And specifically, this word refers to people who are already gone, so who have died. The original Greek word also can mean the martyrs, the ones who were specifically killed for the faith, which would have been happening during the time of this writing. They would have had people that were being persecuted and killed for being Christians. It's saying those people that they're in that cloud, they're in that, among that, the cloud of spectators watching, verifying what we're doing, our faith that's happening right now. We've got the chapter 11 where it talks about all the heroes of the faith, and we read that and we're like, oh, that's so great, because that all happened in history, and we see all that stuff. But those people are lining the Colosseum watching me, watching you, watching the way you live your faith. And you can picture them in your head, that they are cheering you on. They are cheering you on as you face obstacles that they may have faced themselves, or obstacles that they have no idea would even exist someday in the future. But we'll get into that as well. So, cloud of witnesses. Yeah, I skipped that slide. Sorry. Do you need to see that slide there for a minute, LaDonna?
I can't see them.
Oh, you can't see the slide still?
No.
In the recording, maybe in the recording, if you needed to go see them, then you can see the slides. But this is a cloud, vast mass of clouds, witnesses giving testimony of what they have in the past personally seen, and also verifying what is currently happening in front of them. So wherefore, therefore, seeing we are also compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight. The Amplified says, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses who by faith have testified to the truth of God's absolute faithfulness, stripping off every unnecessary weight. The picture there where it says, let us lay aside every weight. To lay aside means to put away or take off, like removing an article of clothing and putting it far from you. So it's not like taking your coat off and tying it around your waist. It's taking it off and laying it over here to the side. In the ancient athletes actually would compete in very little clothing, sometimes naked. In the early Greek society, because they were very hedonistic, they were very carnal, if you will. They liked their athletes to compete naked because it would show off their stuff and intimidate their enemy. Well, that was the reasoning. I don't know. I can't imagine, running a race, or it's not something to laugh at, Nana, but Um, but they might wear like some kind of loincloth or, you know, something.
Most
The old
Yeah,
Roman
they
movies, they
always
have a loincloth around that. Yeah, that's it. Because they would compete with very little clothing. And if you think about it, for us to comprehend it, we might comprehend it the way you would a swimmer. Because a swimmer in their bathing suit, they need their bathing suit to be form fitted so that they don't, there's no resistance. So that's the way we need to think about it. Runners would think about their clothes as providing resistance to running or jumping or getting in the way of running or jumping or whatever. So they would take off their toga, take off their cloak, so that they could run the race without anything getting in their way. That's what it means. Couldn't have seen, yeah. They were it was a very carnal society. It was a very carnal society, and they enjoyed the seeing the blood and seeing the fighting, and that's why they have all the whole gladiator thing and all that. But if they were going to run a race, they needed to do that without anything that was going to provide resistance. The weight, it says to lay aside every weight. The weight is the same word as burden or load, and it indicates heaviness. So think of climbing a mountain and not taking everything heavy out of your backpack, or not carrying a backpack because you can't have that to load you down. So that's what that's saying, is let us lay aside every weight. So what is it that causes us weight? Sin can cause us weight. What else? Worry causes us weight. Depression. What about stuff?
Yeah.
Sometimes we get so into our stuff. Like I know I need to be following God and doing this thing, but I've got these responsibilities and I've got these things and I've got to do this. And sometimes it's the activities that we have that slow us down, that um that hinder us, that cause that burden or that weight. And what the writer of this is saying, because of all the testimony of the witnesses that we just read about, because of all the things they did by faith, this is where we are right now. We got to take off anything that is going to hinder us and remove that burden, take away that load, set it down, leave it there. That's really hard to do. Very hard to do. Let us lay aside every weight. The next phrase is, and the sin. The way it says it in the King James is the sin which doth so easily beset us. Whenever I tried to type beset us in my computer, it just kept wanting to change it. It kept thinking I was misspelling something. The Amplified says the sin which so easily and cleverly entangles us. You read a different word, LaDonna, in the New King James. What was it?
Says
Entrap-
the sin which so easily ensnares us.
Ensnares us. Yes. So here's what we know about the sin that's which doth so easily beset us. Have you ever watched the race, the obstacle course? Seen the obstacle course? If they have a race that's an obstacle course, and you've got some people that are really, really good at some obstacles, but not so good at other obstacles. The obstacle that they're not so great at, that's the one that easily besets them, because it's the one that trips them up. So here's what we know about Satan. Satan knows what specific sin besets you. He knows what obstacle is gonna trip you up, the one that's most attractive. Okay, I'm gonna tell you, Satan's gonna tempt people with all the sins that he can until he finds one or more that'll stick. Which is why, like children are most often tempted to sins of selfishness. Mine, no, I'm not going to share, leave it alone, it's mine. Because those are the sins that easily entrap children. The sins that easily entrap teenagers are sins of rebellion against authority. So Satan throws those things at them, opportunities to rebel against authority. There are some people that have no desire to rebel against authority. They like being obedient, but they might be tempted by something else. Most of the time, teenagers are assaulted with temptations to peer pressure to smoke or drink or try different things. Satan doesn't tempt old people with that because they've already learned that that's dumb. But he tempts teenagers with that because they think they're being original somehow and doing something against authority, and I'll show them I can do anything, kind of thing. That's what Satan will throw at them. I know that Satan throws things at me because he knows I like people to like me. I don't want anybody to be mad at me. And so if somebody's mad at me, it can mess me up. And it messes me up, and I fume over, what did I do? What did I do to make her mad? Why won't she talk to me? What did I do? And it goes over and over in my head, and I play things over and over going, did I do this wrong? Did I say this wrong? What can I do to fix it? Oh my gosh, it's never going to go away. And I lose sleep because I'm fretting about something that Satan threw at me. It's the sin that easily besets me.
Okay. Everybody, what some of you do. Well, my Bible study this morning, when God rang my phone this morning, it says, we came with nothing and we will leave with nothing. Therefore, everything in between stuff, and it weights us down, and we are to be content with what we have. I told Brother Dale, I said, hallelujah, I ought to be happy. Because, stuff, you stop and think about it. If you see it, you want it, you buy it. Well, you came with nothing. You're happy. Babies are happy. Most of the time, old people are happy. So everything in between is just stuff. I don't have no stuff anymore.
The stuff to weigh you down. I know there are other people, like one of the things that Satan throws at me, he has in the past, is because I would get up in front of people to talk and stuff. And for a long time, my appearance, I'm very particular about the clothes that I wear because I want to know that I am not distracting from my message because of how I look. As a child, as a teenager, I wanted to wear things to get attention because Satan knows my personality was the kind where I wanted attention, which is why God did not give me a bikini body. Because if God had given me a bikini body as a teenager, I would have put a bikini on it. And that would have been a sin that easily beset me. And so God saved me by giving me the kind of body I want to cover up. So, but Satan has used that against me a lot when I go out to speak to people and when I go out to speak and stuff, because he would say, nobody wants to see that big fat thing sitting on the stage. And I know it's not true in my head. I know it's in my head, but Satan would easily beset me with it because he would make me feel not good enough and not enough to be able to, because Satan knows that if I speak the message that God wants you to hear, and he lets me use my voice to do it, people can, their lives can change. Satan wants to shut me up, and Satan wants to shut you up. And he knows if he can easily beset you, he can shut you down and shut you off, and you will not be effective for what God has called you to do. So the word for besets, okay, is talking specifically about an obstacle that will thwart the progress of an athlete. So we're talking about the obstacle course, that sin which does so easily beset, is that obstacle that will keep you from moving forward in the race. Satan's most powerful weapon toward all of mankind is unbelief. And so his number one thing to do is to foster doubt in God and his word. That's the first thing he did for Eve, was say, did God really say? Fostering doubt in God and his word. And whenever he whispers to us and says, oh, God just wants you to be happy. If you were in God's will, he would be blessing you and you wouldn't be going through what you're going through. If God were really a God of love, then he wouldn't let this thing set. So whenever Satan whispers any kind of thing, that is, if God really is kind or loving or whatever, just he's trying to plant a seed of doubt, and he's looking for something that will easily beset you, because that's what he does. So therefore, wherefore, seeing all we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience. My Amplified says, let us run with endurance and active persistence. We know that word, patience, as hupomone, the patience inspired by hope. So first, run. The word run isn't like past tense or current tense. It's current and future tense. Run and keep on running. Run and keep on running. The race is not over until we fall into Jesus's arms. We cross that finish line and fall into his arms. That's when the race is over. And the only way to keep going when the race is difficult is through that hupomone, patience inspired by hope. The translation endurance and persistence it's the kind of endurance and persistence which is possible because we trust the outcome. That's the hope which God promised. If you trust the outcome, then you can run with patience, with endurance and persistence, because you trust the outcome. Therefore, wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. King James Amplified says the same thing, the race that is set before us. Guess what? Your timeline is your race. Your timeline is your race. From the moment you were born, you began this race, this journey. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and it lasts your whole life. In Greek, The race was the location of the contest as well as the contest itself. It can also indicate a match or a contention with another, as in a competition where someone wins and someone loses. Now, figuratively, the word also means anxiety or effort. So it's like, when you are at where we are in life, we probably don't race.
Right.
we don't I don't run unless something big and hairy is chasing me and I only have to run faster than you. So, but there's when you run, I know now I run on the treadmill, and I walk on the treadmill and then for a little bit I'll run. And when I run, it increases your heart rate. It and that's that word for anxiety or effort. If you're not expelling any effort, then your exercise isn't helping you any because you're not doing any effort. So when we're talking about running in a race, it means it does take effort. It's not that we sit back and do nothing. You have to do something. And it's interesting to me that the race is talking about where someone wins and someone loses. We are not racing against other people. Sometimes we think we're racing against other people. And if that's what we were doing, then as a Christian, my race, I might be ahead of somebody else, or I might be behind somebody else. Somebody else is going to win and I'm going to lose. That's not what it is. We are all running our own race in our own lifetime, our own timeline, our own timeline of our race. And when we run this race faithfully to the end, we win because we're in the presence. Run into the arms of our Savior, run into the arms of God. We win. And if we don't run our race, Satan wins. And we lose. If Satan is able to stop us from the purpose that God has for us, because here's the other thing about that phrase, the race that is set before us. Your race was set by the God who sees the beginning and the end. God set your race before you. He determined the timelines that would intersect with your timelines, and he determined a purpose for them to intersect. Because God placed people in your timeline so that you could testify, so that you could be a witness, so that you could be the one to testify of what God has done and what God is currently doing, for someone else to be able to see that God is the one who set the race. God set the race before us. And the question you have to ask about that is, do you trust his plan? Do you trust the race set before you? Or did Satan plant that doubt? Do you look back and say, man, I messed up so many times. God does not even want me on his team. If you think that, then you have already been hooked by the sin that so easily besets you. Because the race before us. I'm gonna look real quick. Y'all don't have to turn if you don't want to. First, you already got there, 1 Corinthians chapter 9. Do you want to read 1 Corinthians chapter 9?
I do.
Okay, let me turn the camera to you. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 9, 24 through 20.
Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may obtain it. And everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a perishable crown, but we for an imperishable crown. Therefore I run thus, not with uncertainty. Thus I fight, not as one who beats the air, but I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I have preached to others, I myself shall become disqualified.
Okay. Read a little bit of it in the Amplified, because it says, verse 26 says, therefore, I do not run without a definite goal. I do not flail about like one beating the air, like shadow boxing. Okay. I've got it on the screen. Let me look and see. Do you not know that in a race, all the runners run their very best to win, but only one receives the prize? Run your race in such a way that you may seize the prize and make it yours. Now, we know that when it's talking about only one receives the prize, it's talking about there being a winner and a loser, right? The prize is not salvation, because salvation, we all have that. That is what we already have, is our salvation. The prize is knowing that I ran the race purposefully. I ran the race purposefully. This says, now every athlete who goes into training competes in the games, that every athlete who goes into training and competes in the games is disciplined and exercises self-control in all things. They do it to win a crown that withers, but we do it to receive an imperishable crown that will not wither. Therefore, I do not run without a definite goal. We have a goal set before us, and that goal is to honor God in the race. So the last verse there says, but like a boxer, I strictly discipline my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached the gospel to others, I myself will not somehow be disqualified as unfit for service. Practice what you preach is what it's saying. I can't teach and tell you to run your race if I'm not running my race. If I'm not doing the things that I'm supposed to do, how am I supposed to teach somebody else to do the things that they're supposed to do? And if I'm teaching somebody else and I'm not doing it myself, then I become unfit for service. And that's Paul talking in 1 Corinthians. So back in Hebrews chapter 11, it says, looking unto Jesus. That's the first part of verse 2. Since we are surrounded, since we are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus. The Amplified says, looking away from all that will distract us and focusing our eyes on Jesus. So this word, looking, the word meaning to look away from something that's near and fixate on a place in the distance, afar off. The root word means to fixate so as to discern clearly, making a specific point your intentional focus. I know that that sometimes if you're running outdoors, which I've never done this, but I know that there are people who are runners that run, races and stuff. They're not looking, when I'm running on my treadmill, I'm just paying attention to what's right here in front of me. Because right here in front of me, it's telling me how far I've gone and what my heart rate is and, all that other stuff. But when you're running a marathon, you want to find a point way in the distance and head towards it, because you can't be paying attention to what's right here. You have to be paying attention to what's there, because that's where you're going, and you have to make that focus intentional. And so what the author is saying is not to pay attention to what's right here, but make Jesus your focal point. Um, Jesus, meaning to the example he has given, because we have witnessed through the testimony of others in the Bible, and as an eyewitness to what he's done for you personally, using him as the focal point of the race. Nothing else matters but the finish line where he is standing. So then it says, I know we're running out of time. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. The Amplified says, who is the author and perfecter of faith, the first incentive for our belief, and the one who brings our faith to maturity. Author from the Greek word archegos, meaning the originator, the chief, or the primary leader, also a pioneer, or one who takes the lead in a thing and thus by example. An example. So, as the author of our faith, he is the author of our timeline. He is the author of the race set before us. He is the one who determined. He's the one who determined all the points in your life and how it was going to fit together and how it was going to go. He's the author of it. Now, an author also, according to Webster, the Webster Dictionary, an author is one who produces, creates, or brings into being. Beginner, former, or first mover of anything, hence the efficient cause of a thing. It is appropriately applied to one who composes or writes a book or original work. The author is the one who creates it, who comes up with it, who invents it. And before the beginning of time, God looked down and said, I need a Patricia Fish. I need her to be just like this. And I'm going to put her life and her timeline to go this way and this way. And there's going to be some really bad lows. And there's going to be some really good highs. And her life is going to come into contact with this person and this person and this person. And he authored it on purpose. And he looked and he said, I need a Patricia Roden. And I need her life to go this way. And I need her life. And there's going to be some really hard times. And there's going to be some really good times. And her life is going to intertwine with this person and that person because I have a purpose. And I am authoring this race. I am offering this timeline on purpose. God did that for LaDonna. God did that for Norma. God did that for me. He designed, he's the author of all of our stories. And he wrote this beautiful poem that is your life on purpose. He's the author and the finisher. The finisher is from the Greek word teleotes, meaning completer, consummator, from the root word meaning to complete, fulfill, or make perfect. Okay, I want somebody to go, well, you're going to go to John chapter 19, verse 30 here in just a minute, because everybody who knows me knows that I have started just in the last several years looking at everything in the Bible through the eyes of covenant. Okay. And so the author of covenant and the finisher of covenant, because that word finisher, that word teleotes, is the root word for that is also used in John 19:30. And in John 19:30, it says, when Jesus had, hang on, I got to move when Jesus therefore received the vinegar, he said, it is finished. And he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. You know what he was finishing? He was finishing the contract, the covenant. He was the author and the finisher of the covenant that he made to pay the payment for sin. And he died to finish that contract. When he said it is finished, it is a word that indicates, it's a word that's used in a contract. If you remember, I think we talked about this last week or a couple weeks ago, whenever, or maybe I wrote it in a blog, I don't remember, but whenever Mary met Elizabeth and said something to Elizabeth, and the baby in her womb wept with joy, and then Elizabeth talked about how that God had done a performance. Y'all, did I talk about that? About a performance of something, and that word performance is a accounting term, meaning an action taken that is a part of fulfilling a contract. The last action to fulfill a contract is called the teleotis. That's the last action required to fulfill a contract, making Jesus the finisher of that contract, that covenant contract of our faith. Seeing then that we are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. The word faith is the Greek word meaning the conviction of the truth of something or of anything, the persuasion or conviction of the truthfulness of someone or something. And so I've taught my ladies this before, and we've got it written. I hope everybody has it written. If you don't, write it in the corner of the edge of your Bible. Write it right next to Hebrews chapter 11. It's in my Bible that you're using. It will change the way you see Hebrews chapter 11. It will change the way you read all of anything that has the word faith. If you use the phrase, a solid conviction in the truthfulness of God. Faith is a solid conviction in the truthfulness of God. So when God says to his disciples, "O ye of little faith, O ye who have so little conviction in the truthfulness of God." When he says, by faith, Abraham did this, by a solid conviction in the truthfulness of God, Abraham was able to do this. Where it says we need to grab hold of faith, grab hold of that solid conviction, the truthfulness of God. Because when everything else is falling apart and everything around you is sinking sand, there is a solid conviction in the truthfulness of God. And God says, I set your race in motion. I authored it. And I am waiting at the other side of the finish line. So I'll have people that we're ready to see at the end of the finish line. But no one is more important than looking and seeing the face of the one who authored and finished our whole purpose for conviction in the truthfulness of who God is. So homework. We will not have Bible study next Sunday. Sorry. I'm going to be gone to Dallas for a business trip. And I won't be back in time for Bible study, and there's no way I can do this on the road because I will probably be driving on the way home at time for Bible study. So we're not going to have Bible study on the 18th. We'll come back the next Sunday. So meanwhile, I give you simple homework, but one of the things I want you to do is I want you to, every time you see the word faith in a hymn or a Bible verse or anything else, I want you to see solid conviction in the truthfulness of God whenever you read it. But I gave you a scripture here in your homework. It's Ephesians chapter 5, 15 through 17. Pay attention to what instruction is being given. And I think if there are some practical and specific ways you can follow the instruction given in Ephesians 5, 15 through 17. Any questions? Go forth and run the race, as Pat says. The race that is set before you. And God knows when we're gonna cross the finish line. He's the finisher. He sees the end of the race as and the beginning of the race. So I'm gonna stop the recording now. But I'm so glad that you were able to join us today. See you next time.